I remember sitting in the driver's seat of my car in the parking lot of a pharmacy in Austin, Texas. I was in my early 50s. The engine was idling, the air conditioning was running, and I was staring at a small white paper bag sitting on the passenger seat. Inside that bag was a prescription. It was the prescription that millions of men get when they finally break down and admit to a doctor that their body is no longer responding the way it used to. I remember feeling a very strange mix of relief and profound defeat. I was relieved because I thought I had purchased a solution. I was a corporate sales executive. My entire career was built on finding the fastest, most efficient way to close a gap and solve a problem. If a client was unhappy, I authorized a discount. If a quarter was running behind, I pushed the team to work weekends. I treated my life like a series of fires that needed to be put out, and I treated my body exactly the same way. The fire in this case was the sudden, undeniable quiet in the mornings. The automatic response that had been there my entire life was gone. The system was offline. And sitting in that car, looking at that little bag, I thought I had outsmarted the problem. I thought I had found the override switch. I was completely wrong. I was doing what almost every man in his 50s does when the physical reality of aging hits him in the face. I was treating a symptom and ignoring the disease. We are taught from a very young age to patch the roof when it leaks. We do not look at the foundation. We do not look at the structural integrity of the house. We just find the crack and we seal it. When you lose that morning response, the instinct is to panic and look for the fastest patch available. You want the pill. You want the testosterone clinic. You want the magic supplement you saw an advertisement for at 2 in the morning. You want to treat the symptom because treating the symptom means you do not have to change your life. It means you can keep drinking too much, sleeping too little, living on stress and adrenaline, and just use a chemical crutch to force your body to perform when you need it to. I lived on that crutch for a while, and I will tell you exactly what it does. It works mechanically for a brief window of time, and it leaves you feeling entirely hollow the rest of the day. Because even if you force the system to respond on a Friday night, you still wake up on Tuesday morning to nothing. You still wake up to a body that is quietly shutting down its non-essential functions. You still carry the silent, heavy knowledge that your engine cannot start without jumper cables. During the last years of my first marriage, that reliance on a patch became a wall between us. I did not want to talk about the mechanics of it. I did not want to explain that I needed to time a pill, or that I was anxious about whether it would work this time, or that the side effects left me with a flushed face and a headache. So I just stopped initiating. I let the distance grow. I blamed it on my travel schedule, the pressure of my job, the endless stream of contracts and negotiations. I was too proud to admit that my infrastructure was failing. I was terrified of unpredictability. When you treat the symptom, you are always living in fear of the moment the patch stops working. You never actually build back your confidence, because true confidence only comes when you trust your own body to function on its own. What I had to learn, and what cost me years of silent frustration, is that the loss of morning wood is not a localized problem. It is not an isolated mechanical failure in one specific area of your body. It is a systemic warning system. It is the check engine light flashing on the dashboard. When I finally got tired of feeling like a compromised version of myself, I stopped looking for quicker fixes and started trying to understand how the machine actually operated. I started reading about cardiovascular health. I started looking at the body as an integrated supply chain. And what I found completely changed the way I live every single day. I learned that an erection is a vascular event, not just a sexual one. It relies entirely on the health, the elasticity, and the responsiveness of your blood vessels. And the lining of those blood vessels is made of a single layer of cells called the endothelium. Before my late 50s, I had never heard of the endothelium. I did not know that I had thousands of miles of this delicate tissue inside my body, and I certainly did not know that it was responsible for producing a gas called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is the signal. It is the chemical messenger that tells your blood vessels to relax, to widen, and to allow a massive surge of blood flow. When you are 20 years old, that system is clean and highly responsive. The factory produces the signal, the pipes open wide, the pressure is strong. But over decades of living on cortisol, operating on 4 hours of sleep, eating heavy processed meals in airport lounges, and carrying a constant baseline of stress, I had essentially poured concrete into my own plumbing. When you live in a state of chronic stress, your body pumps out cortisol and adrenaline. Those are vasoconstrictors. They tighten the pipes. They keep everything narrow and tense because your body thinks you are under attack. Over time, that constant restriction damages the endothelial lining. The factory stops producing nitric oxide. The pipes become rigid. The system cannot relax. The reason you lose the morning response first is because that is the diagnostic test. Every night, during the deepest phases of your sleep, your brain runs a system check. It sends the signal down the line to flush the hydraulics with oxygen-rich blood, keeping the tissue healthy and elastic. When you wake up to nothing, it is your body telling you that the signal is not getting through. The pipes are too stiff. The nitric oxide is too low. The supply chain is broken. When I understood that, I looked at the little white paper bag and I realized how foolish I had been. Taking a pill to force blood through rigid, damaged, constricted pipes was like pressing the accelerator to the floor on a car with no oil in the engine. It might move you forward for a mile, but you are going to blow the engine eventually. I did not want a patch anymore. I wanted my foundation back. I wanted the system to work in the dark on a random Tuesday morning without me having to think about it. I wanted my body to trust me again. So I stopped treating the symptom. I decided to rebuild the endothelium. It meant I had to stop looking for a 30-day result. When you have spent 30 years damaging an infrastructure, you have to accept that it will take more than a month of good behavior to clear the rust. You have to commit to a daily maintenance schedule. The first and most critical change had nothing to do with what I was eating or how much I was lifting at the gym. It had to do with how I spent the dark hours of the night. I had to fundamentally change my relationship with sleep. For my entire career, I wore sleep deprivation like a badge of honor. I thought needing 8 hours of sleep was a sign of weakness. I would push myself until midnight, wake up at 5, and use caffeine to bridge the gap. I was destroying my own repair cycle. The endothelium only heals when the body is in deep restorative sleep. That is when the stress hormones drop. That is when the blood pressure lowers. That is when the maintenance crew comes in to clear out the damage. If you cut your sleep short, or if your sleep is shallow and fragmented, you are firing the maintenance crew before they even get to work. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. The heat here is intense during the day, but the nights are quiet. I started protecting my evenings. I stopped looking at screens. I let the house cool down. But the most significant change I made to my sleep was something I resisted for a long time because it sounded ridiculous. I learned about how we breathe. I realized that for years I had been sleeping with my mouth open. I would wake up with a dry mouth, feeling groggy and slightly anxious. I read that nitric oxide, that crucial gas that opens the blood vessels, is actually produced in massive quantities in the nasal cavity. When you breathe through your nose, you pull that gas down into your lungs and it enters your bloodstream, opening your vessels and lowering your blood pressure all night long. When you breathe through your mouth, you bypass that entirely. You are starving your body of its own natural medicine. I started using a small piece of porous medical tape over my lips at night, just enough to keep my jaw closed and force my body to use my nose. The first few nights were frustrating. I felt claustrophobic, but I kept doing it. By the second week, the change in how I felt in the morning was undeniable. I was waking up with a depth of clarity I had not experienced in a decade. My heart rate was lower. I was actually giving my vascular system the environment it needed to relax and repair. The second major shift was how I started my mornings. For 30 years, my routine was to roll out of bed, feeling stiff and dehydrated, and immediately pour a massive cup of black coffee. I was taking a dehydrated system and dumping a powerful vasoconstrictor straight into it. I was telling my blood vessels to clamp down the second I woke up. I changed the sequence. Now I wake up before the sun. The first thing I do is walk into the kitchen and drink a large glass of room temperature water with a pinch of quality sea salt. I give the system volume. I hydrate the tissue. I flush the pipes before I introduce any kind of stimulant. I wait at least an hour, sometimes longer, before I touch coffee. When you are trying to heal a damaged vascular system, you have to respect the mechanics of hydration. Blood cannot flow if it is thick and sludgy. You have to provide the water and the minerals to keep the river moving. Then came the movement. I used to think that the only way to stay in shape was to punish myself. I would go to the gym and lift heavy weights until my joints hurt, or I would run until I was exhausted. But I learned that intense punishing exercise can actually cause a massive spike in cortisol. If your body is already overwhelmed by the stress of your daily life, adding extreme physical stress just makes the blood vessels tighten even more. I shifted my entire philosophy from punishment to circulation. My goal was no longer to break my muscles down. My goal was to create steady, consistent demand for oxygen. I started walking long, brisk walks every single day through the desert trails near my house. I added light resistance training, just enough to keep my frame strong, but the core of my routine became sustained, moderate movement. There is a mechanical reason for this. When your heart pumps a steady, elevated volume of blood through your arteries during a brisk walk, that blood creates physical friction against the walls of your blood vessels. It rubs against the endothelium. That physical friction is the exact trigger that tells those cells to wake up and produce more nitric oxide. Every time I walk, I am literally clearing the rust out of the pipes. I am manually retraining my body to open the supply lines. And of course, the fuel had to change. I could not keep eating heavily processed meals late at night. I could not keep expecting a high-performance engine to run on cheap fuel. I started eating foods that I knew contained the dietary nitrates my body needed to manufacture that signal. Beets, spinach, arugula, citrus fruits. I started looking at my plate not as a reward for a hard day, but as the raw material for tomorrow morning. I stopped eating 3 hours before bed. If your digestive system is working overtime to process a heavy meal, your body cannot prioritize repairing the vascular system. You have to let the engine cool down before you park it for the night. I'm going to be completely honest with you. When I started doing this, nothing happened immediately. For the first month, the mornings were still quiet. There was no sudden return to my 20s. It is incredibly hard to stay disciplined when you do not see immediate results. It is the moment where most men quit. It is the moment where you are tempted to just go back to the pharmacy, get the patch, and accept that your body is permanently broken. But I had promised myself I was going to treat the root cause. I knew that repairing decades of damage was going to take time. It was about 4 months in. I'd been taping my mouth at night, hydrating in the dark mornings, walking every day, and protecting my sleep. I woke up one morning lying on my back, feeling the cool air in the room. And I noticed something. It was faint. It was not a perfect, roaring start to the engine. But there was a pulse. There was a physical response. The system was trying to come online. I laid there and I felt a profound sense of quiet victory. I had not forced it. I had not used a chemical. My body, my own machinery, was finally starting to heal enough to run its own diagnostic test again. Over the next year, that faint signal grew stronger. The consistency returned. And what surprised me the most was not just the physical change, but the psychological shift that accompanied it. When you restore your body from the ground up, you stop living defensively. You stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. You walk into a room with a different kind of posture because you know your foundation is solid. You are no longer relying on a trick or a patch. You have done the work. I'm married to Alyssa now. She is a very direct, emotionally honest woman who does not have patience for pretense or ego. When we met, I was already deep into this process of rebuilding myself. Because I understood exactly what was happening in my body, I was able to have conversations with her that I could never have had in my first marriage. I told her about the vascular system. I told her that my focus was on total physical health, not just performance. I removed the pressure from the bedroom and put the focus on our overall lifestyle. We walk together. We protect our sleep together. Because the truth is on the table, there is zero anxiety. If we have a long week, if we are exhausted and the system is tired, we do not panic. We do not create distance. We know it is just a temporary fluctuation in a healthy system, not the beginning of the end. The honesty creates a level of intimacy that a quick fix can never replicate. I look at my son, Ethan. He is in his early 30s, building his career in commercial real estate. He is living on his phone, drinking too much coffee, cutting his sleep short to close deals. He thinks he is invincible because he is young. He thinks the engine will just keep taking the abuse forever. I do not lecture him, but I drop hints. I talk to him about infrastructure. I try to get him to see that every late night, every stress response, every skipped hour of sleep is a withdrawal from a bank account that eventually demands repayment. I want him to start maintaining the pipes now so he does not have to spend his 50s trying to clear out the rust. And I look at the men my own age. I see them in the hardware store or sitting at the bar in a restaurant carrying that heavy, quiet resignation. I know the internal dialogue they are having. I know they think their best years are strictly in the past. I know they are secretly relying on a prescription just to feel normal for an hour a week. It does not have to be that way. If you are a man over 50 and you want that morning response back, you have to stop treating the symptom. You have to stop looking for a shortcut. The shortcut is what got you here. You have to respect the machinery. You have to view your body as an integrated system that requires absolute consistency in its maintenance. You need to close your mouth when you sleep. You need to protect your deep recovery hours like they are the most important meetings of your day. You need to wake up and hydrate the tissue before you hit it with caffeine. You need to walk every single day to force that steady, rhythmic friction through your blood vessels and wake up the endothelium. It is not complicated. It is just daily, unglamorous work. You are going to have to be patient. Your body has been waiting for you to stop punishing it for a very long time. It will take time for it to trust you again. It will take time for the factory to clear out the sludge and start producing the signal. But I am telling you, as a man who sat in that pharmacy parking lot feeling like the game was over, the body wants to function. The engine wants to run. If you stop applying cheap patches and start rebuilding the foundation, the plumbing can come back online. You are not broken. You have just been ignoring the root cause. Start tomorrow. Start with the water, start with the walk, and make the decision to actually fix the house instead of just painting over the cracks. Simple as that.